Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Today I am bringing you a collab video, which is also kind of a tag video. My friend Hannah Blackwell asked me to be a part of this Get to Know the Fantasy Romance Reader book tag, which is a very big mouthful, but basically it means we're just going to chat about my love for fantasy romance. So yeah, we're going to dive into this. I will also have Hannah linked down below, as well as I'm pretty sure this will be put into a playlist for fantasy romance reader book tags, because there's quite a few people that I think will be joining in with this one. So I'm very excited to see the journey of some other people and how they came into fantasy romance as well. So yeah, we're just gonna go on this journey. There'll be some recommendations that I'm giving by this, but mostly we're just gonna talk about my history with fantasy romance, which right off the bat with question one here, we start with what book got you into fantasy romance. And this one is a bit of like a story time for me, just because I don't think there was a very like linear jump into this. I've shared a lot when I talk about my love of like how I got into romance in general, that a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was reading a lot of YA fantasy, and what I would love is when there was a romance and I would never quite get the same squeeze out of it that I wanted to. I would never get the, fulfillment of the relationship like I would want to, or let's face it, the smut that I would want from it. And at around that time too is when I first discovered historical romance, which led me down a fully romance tract. But when I look at like which fantasies made me want to read fantasy romance, they were actually, YA or even middle grade fantasies that had either very, very slight romance plot lines, or maybe not even at all, or maybe it was even that I wanted them to be steamier than they were and I wasn't getting that from them. And that kind of led me down this track of looking for more fantasy romance where I was getting all of those things in it. So of course a lot of these questions too are going to ask for like one book that did something, but for me it's never one book that like converts me into something. So there's a few that I'm going to talk about. So first I'm actually going to mention Aragon. I read Aragon when I was 13 or 14, which Aragon is actually having its 20-year anniversary this year, which is just crazy to me. Wow. But I read it in middle school. And again, I know this one doesn't even have any romance in it. I know. And the point being, throughout this entire series, which started when I was young, and grew, I didn't get to read the last book until my first year in college is when the very last book came out. But I was always hoping there would be more romance in this book. So the reason why I put this in, like, what is a book that led you to want it, is it led me to crave there being more. Then there, of course, is also Twilight, which I know is a bit more like paranormal on the aspect of it. But with Twilight, that one is a romance. Like the whole purpose of that one is like it's romance and wanting to be with your vampire lover until you die forever, and love overcoming the urge for hunger and things like that, being a stronger hunger than bloodlust. But I know, I never quite got the spice kick out of it that I wanted. And at that time in my middle school and high school years, I was really craving it. And so when Breaking Dawn came out, and even though there was a wedding night with barely any smut in it at all, that is what I was wanting from it. I was wanting it to be more adult. I was wanting more of it. And it's that urge, that hunger to have it, that made me look for it more and more. And then the last one I kind of want to mention in this, like, what got you into it, is actually the Lunar Chronicles. Now, this I didn't read until my very early 20s either. I read this at like 21, 22. And this, again, like, there was a romance in pretty much every book in this series. There's a couple. I am a Cresswell myself. I love Cresswell, but I also love Cinder and Kai as well. And there was really beautiful romances in these YA, and I love that. There was still a big focus on the adventure and on the teamwork, and like the crew of the Rampion forever. I love them so much. I listened to those audiobooks and I just had the best time. Only the first 3 books were out when I discovered them, so I had to wait for the 4th book, and like it was torture. It was torture waiting for that last book to come out. But I loved the romances in there, and I just wanted there to be more. So yeah, those are kind of some books in different areas and different examples that were showing me that it was a romance and fantasy together that I was really looking for. Question number 2. A fantasy world that you would love to move into for the rest of your life. So this one, I don't want my answers to be the same books for every single one of these, but I do have some fantasies that are closer to my heart than others, so I'm just putting this out there for you. So one that I would choose that would be a little more dangerous of a world to live in, because things are always pretty effed up in there, is Prithian. Like, I would love to live in Prithian, preferably in the Night Court, in Valaris. I would love to live there, but also, you know, it's still not a super safe place to live where we're at in the series. Like, there's stuff popping up all the time. So once we finally defeat all the evil, then I would like to live in Prithian. And the other one I would choose, which this is a bit more of like a boring answer because it's basically just our world but magic exists, which, I mean, that's what I want. I would like to live in Harry Potter's world of London. Like, I would like to live in the wizarding world of London. Maybe I don't even need to be in London. It could just be here. But I would have magic and I could make things happen better for me. These two worlds are worlds that just, they're places that I want to live. But if we were going off like fantasy romance only, I would pick Prithian. I would pick that. I would love to live there. If you could marry one bookish hero or heroine, who would it be? So this one might surprise some people, but this hero is on my book boyfriend's list. He has been since I read this book. And I think he is so like caring for his heroine. And because, again, there's some more questions coming where I'm going to use some other heroes more. For who I would marry, I would pick Ballard of Catactor from Entreat Me by Grace Draven. I love his romance with Louvain, and I just think it's so beautiful. And where they end up at the end of their book and just the beautiful relationship they have, I think he would be an amazing book husband. I would love to marry him. So I know I could stretch this. I could stretch this and say that Outlander is a fantasy romance, but I won't. Because we all know Jamie is actual book husband. But I would pick Ballard. I would pick Ballard. I love him so much. If you could be one fantasy creature, what would you be? So this one was actually really difficult because I just finished reading Fourth Wing, and I really would love to be a dragon. I really would love to be a dragon and be that powerful and amazing. But I also don't know if I'd really want to be in the body of an animal, even though, not to spoil anything, but the dragons in this are able to like mate and have like relationships. So I could still have love if I was a dragon. But I think in actuality, I would like to be a fae. I don't know what kind of fae I would like to be. If I'd like to be a fae in like the fae guardian sense, be able to shift into something, you know, or if I would just want to be in, you know, Sarah J. Maas's world. I'm not sure what kind of fae, but also I feel like fae covers a lot of levels. So I think I would pick a fae over anything else. If you could kill one fantasy romance character, who would you off? Now, thankfully, a lot of the evil fae that I would like to kill off, they are dead already. But I thought I would throw back to some of those first series that I mentioned. And one of the deaths that was most satisfying for me to read, and I would maybe like to have been a part of, would be Lavanna, the Moon Queen, the Lunar Queen. I hated her so much in that series, just so much. And I know she has her tragic backstory, she has her drama, but she still tried to kill a baby, okay? She still tried to kill a baby, and I don't love it. And then as a bonus, I don't have specific people for this, but basically all of the evil people in the Black Witch Chronicles. They're so bigoted and hateful and evil, I would just like to wipe them all out. I would just like to do that. Yeah, I'd like to do that. Number 6, which fantasy romance character would be your best friend? So for this one, I also have 2 because they keep telling me to pick one and it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry, everyone else who tried to pick one. I'm not picking one. I'm picking multiple. So first up, I do have to pick Aiko from Lunar Chronicles, our lovable little android helper who first is in a tiny little body and then gets put into a robot body. I adore her. I think she's the best friend to Cinder and the crew, and so I would love Aiko to be my friend. But someone else I also picked because I think she would be such a fierce friend and bestie to have, and that's Lysandra from the Throne of Glass series. I think she is a wonderful friend, and even though there are characters who try to make her an enemy of Aelin at times, the bond that they have by the end of that series, I think, is so, so lovely. And I think Lysandra is badass with her shifter power and just how fierce she is, and so I adore her so much. What would be your weapon of choice? So this would depend on if I get to like be a fae and then like have powers that could do things, but going along the lines like of Harry Potter or of even the Black Witch Chronicles, they actually use a wand, and I think having a wand and being able to channel power that way seems pretty legit to me. I think I would pick that, the wielding magic, over having like an axe or an arrow or something, although bow and arrows, definitely a classic fantasy weapon for sure, for sure. So we're going for a wand for that. All right, question 8. Who is the sexiest fantasy romance character of all time? And this is what I've saved it for. Okay, I know. A lot of people are probably going to pick this one. Okay, I won't be the only one. But I'm picking Rhysand for this one. That's why I didn't pick him for a husband, because I wanted to save him for the sexiest. Although, Silver Flames ties with Akamath for me for my favorite Sarah J. Maas book. It really does. And so I may also pick Cassian depending on the day, because boy, he's a hottie. I love him for sure. Pick one fantasy romance book to burn. Oh, well, I would never say that you should burn fantasy books. And this one is really just kind of a throwaway for me, so I'm not like viciously attacking this fandom. Please do not take it that way. But a fantasy romance book I would maybe burn like A Touch of Darkness. I know. That's a weird choice. Let me explain. So I read A Touch of Darkness and like A Touch of Ruin, whichever the second ones were, and now I've just been hanging out and waiting for this series to be finished. But when the more that time like expands between when I've read that and when I maybe read it more, I just really don't care for this series at all. And the longer it takes to get put out and the more tangents that the author goes on, I get a little bit bitter and a little bit salty about it. And I know I shouldn't. This is just a personal me being bitchy about it. You know, if we burned the book, you know, we'd still have the ebook and the audiobook. That's what I'd say. That's my wraparound. Would I burn the book? Actually, no. Although if it was needing to live, I would burn books to live. So we'll say that. I'm not that irrational. There are some books that would definitely be the very last books that ever got burned. But let's just say Touch of Darkness would be one of the first. We'll just go with that. One fantasy romance book to read forever with nothing else ever. So if we got one book forever. So this one, I like, again, I hate just being a basic reader bitch here, but I would pick Akamath. I really would pick Akamath. I've already read A Court of Mist and Fury 10 to 15 times, and I'm always cry. I always am sucked into it. I always am reading every line, and I'm trying to pick up new pieces to it, and I never get tired of it. I have never gotten tired of it, and I've been reading this book for years and years. So I am going to go with that one. I know that Sarah J. Maas is showing up a lot in this video. I'm sorry. I wish I could give you other answers for it. But if you were just asking me what's one book, it would be that. And I think part of it is the fact that a lot of fantasy romance that I've read has been in just the last couple of years, that it's really expanded to there actually being fantasy romance as a full genre with sexy times and all the other tropes that I love. So I love that. And they just don't have the same longevity yet that Sarah's books have for me, those first two have been out for quite a while now. This is just ramblings. Don't take this as fact. But for me personally, if I had to get rid of every other fantasy that I own, I would pick Akamath. I would be very sad to lose quite a few books, including, look at my beautiful copy of Between Wrath and Mercy. It's just gorgeous. Like, that would be very hard to lose. It would. However, I would survive, but I would need Akamath for me. And then finally, number 11, one fantasy romance to recommend to people who are new to the genre. And this one, I am going to recommend Entreat Me by Grace Draven. And the reason why, there are some slight familiarities between it and Beauty and the Beast. I mean, it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling in some aspects, and I find that it's easiest to get people into a new genre when you introduce them to a book that is similar to maybe other things you've seen. And the Beauty and the Beast trope tends to exist within like every subgenre. It's in sci-fi, it's in mystery scenarios, it's in contemporary books, and so I feel like that could be a good intro into it. It also is a standalone, so you're not immediately throwing someone into a series where they just have to sell their soul to get through all of them. So that's my recommendation. I'm gonna recommend Entreat Me by Grace Draven, and hopefully you just start falling in love with all of that, and then we can just pile on the recommendations for you. That's what we do. So, and then the last one, of course, is to tag some friends. And as always, I'm just going to say, if you want to make this, the questions are either in my video or they'll be in Hannah's video. I'll try to remember to put them in mine. Otherwise, you can go to Hannah's and find it. You should go watch Hannah's video. And yeah, thank you to all my friends who are collabing on this with me. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Check out my playlist if you'd like some other recommendations from me. And I'll see you next time. Bye.